The internet has revolutionized the process of choosing gifts for New Year and Christmas. A few clicks of the mouse, a couple of days for delivery, and you receive any gift, carefully packed and carefully delivered by a courier. But there were times before the era of instant gratification when to go shopping you had to leave the house and immerse yourself in the world of shopping centers, hypermarkets, and boutiques. So on December 23, 1974, three girls, practically girls, went shopping at the mall, unwittingly depriving their families of the festive spirit of that New Year's Eve and all the years since. But the families are still waiting and hoping that new evidence will soon be found that can shed light on the nearly half-century-long mystery of the disappearance of the Fort Worth trio. The girls were Mary Rachel Terlika, Lisa Renee Wilson, and Julianne Mosley. Rachel, 17, was the oldest of the girls and had movie star looks. She had been married for 6 months, which was not as unusual in 1974 as it would be today. Rachel's husband, Thomas Terlika, whom she affectionately called Tommy, was a handsome 21-year-old. Despite his age, Tommy was divorced and had a 2-year-old child from a previous marriage. Before marrying Rachel, he was engaged to her sister Deborah. Deborah was 2 years older than Rachel and just as pretty. Years later, she would roll her eyes and tell the media that her engagement to Tommy was fake. She always said there was no jealousy or animosity between her and Rachel over Tommy. By all indications, that was true. Shortly before her disappearance, Rachel even invited her sister to stay at her house after Deborah broke up with her boyfriend. She was still living with the couple when Rachel went missing. On December 23, 1974, Rachel decided to go Christmas shopping at the Seminary South Shopping Center. She asked Deborah to come with her, but she was tired and wanted to sleep. So Rachel invited her friend Renee, who was visiting her grandparents at their home on Gordon Avenue. Their families were close friends, and the girls had known each other all their lives. That morning, Renee was hanging out with her boyfriend, 15-year-old Terry Mosley, who lived across the street. He woke her up to surprise her with a promise ring before an engagement ring, which is worn to signify fidelity. More than 4 decades have passed since then, but Terry recently opened up about the ring he gave to the girl he loved so long ago. I think it had the dolphins on it that she loved so much. When Rachel called to invite her to go shopping, Renee agreed, but only if they were back no later than 4 p.m. She and Terry were going to a Christmas party that evening, and she wanted to make sure she had time to get ready. It would be the first party she would wear her new ring to, and Renee wanted to look her best. Life in Fort Worth, Texas, like many other parts of the country, was different in the 1970s than it is today. His father left home and his mother had to work, so she was never home, Terry Mosley recalls. On December 23rd, Terry was home because he was on vacation. "I would be more careful today, but then we could be home without our parents," Terry said. His sisters, Janet, 11, and Julie, 9, were also home, and he had crossed the street that morning to see the girl, Renee Wills, 14. Before Terry left Renee, she told him she was going to the store to pick up a pair of jeans that had been set aside for her. "She wanted me to go with her," Terry said. "I backed out, kind of at the last minute, because my friend had to go into the hospital for surgery. I promised him I'd spend time with him, and I didn't want to break that promise," Renee told Terry she was going shopping with Rachel. Rachel and Renee invited Janet to join them on their trip to the mall, but Janet chose to stay with her friend. That's when Terry's younger sister, Julie, saw an opportunity to spend time with the 2 older girls. "I know Renee and Rachel didn't want to take Julie because she was only 9, Terry recalls. "So they tried to get around it by telling her she could only go if she got her mother's permission. They were sure she wouldn't allow it, as she always did." Julie excitedly called Ryan Mosley's mom at work and asked if she could go with the girls. Her mom said no. Julie had no money, and besides, although she knew Renee very well, she did not know Rachel. But Julie begged to let her go, explaining that otherwise she would have no one to go out with. The mother finally gave in and allowed her daughter to go to the mall. Shortly before noon, Rachel, Renee, and Julie climbed into a 1972 Oldsmobile 98. It was a powerful car, long and wide. It was easy to imagine the parents' confidence that their daughters would be safe in such a car. After all, no one could know where danger would be waiting for them. First, the friends stopped at the Army-Navy store to pick up the jeans they had set aside for Renee. Then the girls headed to Seminary South Shopping Center. Later, several shoppers would report seeing their friends there. Renee, in particular, stood out from the other girls because of her clothes. According to witnesses, she was wearing either a white jumper or a pale yellow-green t-shirt with the words "Sweet Honesty" written on it. While the girls were shopping, their families were also busy with their own affairs. The parents went to work, the brothers went out for a walk. It was a normal day in Fort Worth. No one could have imagined that their lives would never be the same again. If Renee hadn't been so eager to attend Terry's Christmas party, it might have taken longer for her family to realize something was wrong. But she was determined to be home by 4 p.m., and the families noticed that the girls were still missing by the appointed time. Julie's mother also told her not to be late and was upset when the girl didn't show up on time. Rachel's family, in turn, thought that maybe her car had broken down. There were no cell phones back then, so the worried family drove to the mall, looking along the road for Rachel's car. When they didn't see it, they drove around the mall parking lot, trying to spot the brown '98 Oldsmobile in a sea of cars on one of the busiest days of the year. Around 6 p.m., they saw the car parked on the top level of the Sears lot. The doors were locked and a single wrapped Christmas present was lying on the floor in front of the back seat. It was believed that it was a gift Renee had purchased for Rachel's 2-year-old stepson, Sean. Other sources say the girls had done more shopping and there were many presents in the car. Whatever the case, the friends themselves were nowhere to be found. Rachel's younger brother, Rusty Arnold, was 11 when the girls went missing. Now in his 50s, he remembers driving with his mother, Fran, to the mall to look for his older sister and her 2 friends. There were a lot of people. It was impossible to find 3 girls in such a crowd. But Fran turned out to be a resourceful woman who was not going to rely on luck. She took Rusty to each store and asked the manager to call the girls on the loudspeaker. No one answered. Fran wasn't the only one who thought something was wrong. Renee's father, Richard, and their neighbor had climbed onto the roof of a nearby building that evening to keep an eye on the car. The men pointed their guns at the abandoned Oldsmobile. They didn't know what they were waiting for, but they were going to be ready. The families called all the girls' friends, asking if they'd seen or heard anything. No one knew anything. They called the hospitals and, of course, the police. The police, the city, and the family's stories are divided on what happened next. The families claimed that the police did not take the girls' disappearance seriously because they assumed they had run away. But that theory didn't hold up. Why would they have asked Terry, Janet, and Debris to join them if they were planning to run away? Why would they have taken a 9-year-old girl with them? None of them had taken any clothes or personal belongings. They had little money and abandoned the car in a parking lot. It all made very little sense. I can tell you that they did not run away that night. Renee wanted to go to that party, and no 9-year-old girl runs away 2 days before Christmas. Everyone knows that, said Judy Wilson, Renee's mother. I don't think the girls ran away. Renee wanted me to go to the mall with her. I'm pretty sure I would have known. A planned getaway, says Terry. And Rachel had this beautiful car. If you're going to run away, why leave it in a car park? Police disagreed with the family's account, saying they were proactive in their investigation from the start. An article that appeared in a local newspaper the day after the girls went missing reported that police were looking for them, but had no reason to suspect foul play. A few days later, police were less certain, telling the paper they did not know whether a crime had taken place. And 4 months later, another article reported that police initially believed the girls had run away. So the period articles partly corroborate the family's account of what really happened. But if the families were right, and the police did not take the case seriously from the start, the letter was probably the reason. The next day was Christmas Eve. The houses were beautifully decorated and lit up with Christmas lights, and brightly decorated presents were already waiting under the decorated trees. It was a festive time, but the girls' families were in no mood to celebrate. Terry Mosley, who lost his sister and girlfriend at the same time, says he couldn't eat or sleep and gave away his gifts. It was also the day Rachel's husband, Tommy Terlika, found a letter in his mailbox. He would later say that he believed the envelope was sealed. The stamp had been placed on the envelope that morning. Rachel's name was written in the upper left corner of the envelope, but there were no names or addresses for the sender. Inside was a piece of paper with sentences written on it in large, slanted handwriting. The letter said, "I know we're going to get in trouble, but we just had to get away. We're heading to Houston. See you in about a week. Car in the Sears parking lot. Love, Rachel." Rachel's family never believed that she wrote the letter. They said that it was not her handwriting. They also pointed out other inconsistencies. For example, the fact that the letter was addressed to Thomas Terlich, even though Rachel always called her husband Tommy. Also, it seems that Rachel's name was originally misspelled. If you look closely, the last letter of her name was originally written as an I and then lengthened to make an L. 6 days after receiving the letter, police told a local newspaper that they had confirmed the handwriting was Rachel's. but also admitted that she may have been forced to write the letter. However, in 1978, Fort Worth police detective George Hudson refuted this claim, revealing that they had sent fragments of the letter Rachel had written to the FBI for analysis, and the results were inconclusive. The letter's true author remains unknown. The stamp on the envelope was also discussed. The stamp had no city, only a blurred postal service number, 76083, with the 3 seemingly printed backwards. The family speculated that the 3 was actually a half-printed 8, which could lead investigators to Weatherford, Texas, a 35-minute drive from Fort Worth. Another possibility was the code 76483, which pointed to Throckmorton, Texas, a small town 2 hours outside of Fort Worth with a population of less than 1,000. Many simply did not believe that the letter could have been sent that day. But in 2001, police confirmed that the stamp was real and valid and that the letter had been sent that morning from Fort Worth. Whoever sent the letter, its contents, unfortunately, were not true. The girls didn't come back a week later. They never came back. The girls disappeared at a time when DNA testing didn't exist. By the time testing was possible, it was too late to examine the car. The letter was eventually tested for DNA, but no matches were found for any of the girls or anyone in the database. Overall, this means that much of the investigation into Rachel, Renee, and Julie's disappearance relied on good old-fashioned detective work by officers, detectives, the girls' families, and even psychics. In the days following the disappearance, residents contacted police to report seeing the 3 girls at the mall. Most noticed nothing out of the ordinary. Others, however, claimed that something caught their attention. Police spoke to a night watchman who worked down the road from the mall. He said he saw a car with 2 men and 3 girls turning onto the road the night of the disappearance. That lead went nowhere. Police also spoke to a ticket seller at the bus station who claimed the 3 girls had inquired about travel to Houston and other destinations the morning after the disappearance. Police said they were unsure how reliable the information was. In early spring 1975, the 3 families, frustrated by the lack of progress in the investigation, hired Joe Swaim, a well-known private investigator. Mr. Swaim was a very flamboyant and public figure. He regularly held press conferences to pressure the Fort Worth Police Department. He also succeeded in getting the police to share copies of the case files with him. He followed up on various leads and claimed to have received tips from informants regarding the location of the girls' bodies. The police conducted numerous searches based on information from the private investigators' anonymous sources. None were successful. At the same time, the police were so desperate for leads that they even agreed to the help of psychics who claimed to know where the bodies were. At one point, they even dug up the ground near an oil well after receiving a call from a seer in Hawaii. Again, nothing came of it. In 1978, police detective George Hudson discussed the case with a local newspaper. He lamented the fact that handwriting analysis had led nowhere and said he had made several trips outside the city to follow up on some leads, but they had led nowhere. His frustration was obvious. Despite claiming that every clue was followed, he says, "We never got further than the parking lot." At one point he adds, "I don't know what else we can do." The article also mentions a lead that police failed to follow up. In 1975, the media reported that an elderly woman told 3 store employees that she had seen a man dragging a girl into a pickup truck on the day she disappeared. She also said that 2 other girls and another man were already inside the vehicle. She did not report this to law enforcement, despite numerous calls from the police. The woman was never found. Several years later, a new witness came forward claiming he was in the mall parking lot on December 23, 1974, and saw a man drag 3 girls into a van. He told authorities he approached the man, who said it was a family matter. His story could never be verified. The case was long and exhausting for all concerned. Finally, it was closed. In 2001, the case was reopened. Science had advanced greatly since 1974, and the families were hopeful that they might finally learn what happened to the girls. Fort Worth police held a press conference to announce that they had spoken to at least 20 new witnesses who said they had seen the girls at the mall. Police have narrowed the list of possible suspects to 5 people. Detective Tom Butcher said, "We can say that they were seen with one person at one point, but we believe there is more than one person involved." Butcher also said witnesses believe the girls left with someone they trusted. Among the new leads, police investigated the testimony of former police officer Bill Hutchins, who was working as a security guard at Sears the night the girls disappeared. Mr. Hutchins was working the night shift and claimed that he was suddenly confronted by another young mall security guard who arrived in a pickup truck at about 11:30 p.m. Apparently, he and the other guard exchanged some harsh words for some unknown reason. Hutchins claimed that he approached the car and saw 3 girls inside. He made a point of emphasizing how they were seated, noting that they all fit in the front seat. The youngest girl sat next to the driver, the oldest in the middle, and the oldest and largest girl sat near the door. He described how they were smiling and laughing and seemed to be there of their own free will. According to Hutchins, he apologized for the words he used during the argument, and they left. Bill added that he reported the incident to police in 1974, but no one investigated the report until the case was reopened in 2001. When it came to light, Fort Worth police told a local news station that they spoke to the security guard described by Hutchins, who denied being with the girls that night. Detectives added that they believe this is a strong lead, but they are focusing on not 1 but 5 different suspects. Unfortunately, the 2001 investigation has also yielded no results, and the case is still open. Police have shared very few details about the case, which is very frustrating for the families. But Terry says he understands them because the case hasn't been closed. Investigators are doing what they can with old information. They have to interview people who must have had that information in their heads for 4 decades, he says. Rachel Risty's brother is the only one trying to make a difference. He is one of the administrators of the Facebook page dedicated to the missing girls, but his efforts do not end there. In September 2018, Risty organized a dive in Benbrook Lake, where the girls disappeared. Risty decided to investigate the lake after learning that one possible suspect's car had gone missing around the time the girls disappeared. If that person wanted to get rid of the car, the closest body of water is the lake, he said. And we didn't just find a car, we found 3. Risty told the media that one of the cars belonged to a person of interest in the case. We believe the car he was driving disappeared at the same time the girls went missing, he said in August 2018. We were exploring different theories, and we found that this person lived within 5 miles of Benbrook Lake at the time. That's a lead. Risty said local scientists examined 2 of the cars. Unfortunately, neither was linked to the missing girls. But for the 3rd car, a diver went down and brought back part of it. I was able to identify what kind of car it was before we pulled it out of the lake, Risty said. We'll get it out of the lake in the spring. All I can say right now is that this car is interesting. Divers tried to raise a 3rd car in 2019, but it proved too dangerous because the car had spent so much time in the water. In the summer of 2020, Rusty and the divers decided that if they couldn't raise the car, they could at least examine its contents. He said he didn't believe the girls' bodies would be found inside, but he said he had to because neither he nor his mother would ever be able to let go of the lake until they had examined the inside of the car. After the dive, it became clear that there were no girls' bodies in the car, and Rusty and his mother could move on. The problem with cases like these is that they spread, affecting everyone in their path. This case was no exception. In the late 90s, Rusty, who was already an adult but never gave up on the idea of finding his sister alive, contacted private detective Dan James after seeing his ad in the directory. It turned out that Mr. James was familiar with the case and had been following it since 1975, and even had a few theories. He offered his services to Rusty free of charge. The private detective even bragged publicly that he would pay a $25,000 reward for information about the girls. However, he never set up a bank account to pay, and the offer was soon forgotten. Mr. James had been investigating the case for years. It was obviously a dangerous undertaking. He told the media that he had received threats and warnings, but he continued to investigate anyway. He followed every rumor, lead, and conspiracy theory surrounding the case. It was a difficult path, and he dragged Rusty along it. In 2000, Rusty and Dan gave an interview to the local newspaper and theorized that Rachel was the only one left alive. But someone was keeping her far from her hometown, even though she visited every year for Christmas. James also said that someone was hiding evidence to keep him away. Rusty, for his part, told the reporter that someone close to one of the girls was involved in the disappearance. Although he did not name the suspect, a letter published in the newspaper a few days later made his suspicions clear. The letter urged his sister Deborah to take a polygraph test. It was signed by Rusty, Julia's mom, Ryan Mosley, and Renee's parents, Richard and Judy Wilson. Rachel's mom, of course, did not sign the letter, which was unsurprising given that she had recently told the media that she blamed Dan James for breaking up her family and poisoning Rusty's mind. Mother and son had not spoken for several years at the time. In 2009, Deborah posted on an online forum for a crime and missing persons community that she had, in fact, successfully passed 2 polygraph tests, including one by the FBI. She denied any knowledge or involvement in the girls' abductions. Over time, Rusty seemed to believe that the girls were probably already dead. He also mended his relationship with his mother. During an interview in December 2017, he sat next to Fran and seemed a little ashamed when asked about his previous theories. Rusty and Rachel's mother, Fran Langston, continues to place 3 angels on the lawn every Christmas to symbolize the missing girls.